Hi, this is
Oh,
Dustin, Mother's Bob. Would you like to introduce yourself?
sure. Hi, Kristin. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm fine. Um, so I'm Kristin's older brother. Uh, I really don't know what to say. Live in the Midwest. I went into teaching art, but my interests lie in philosophy, particularly aesthetics. I wanted to always be a filmmaker and still have aspirations to do so, but there's a few other like things that I'm actually trying to weed out in my two-dimensional like visual art and philosophy and underlying um, content layering. So other than that, married, two kids, an annoying cat, and just here for the ride.
Thank you. Awesome introduction. And I also want to add that Dustin is an amazing artist, so inspiring, and I would not be the person I am without him.
I'm sorry.
But in many ways, but I'm very grateful. And we are very close. We're like good buds. And also, we do have different film tastes, which is actually good because now we can, dissect and talk about things we like in film and TV and things we don't like and have different perspectives to share. So, what we're covering in me and Dustin's, or Dustin and I, whatever you want to call it, our first podcast together, episode together, is The Shining by Stanley Kubrick. And
One of the most probably overanalyzed films of all time, but we'll just do this for fun, right?
yeah,
Heck, if we have some neat insights, like I said, I can either post the video if you don't want to, or we were kind of talking about nobody goes to either of our channels, so it doesn't really matter.
doesn't matter. But we chose this because this is actually Dustin's favorite movie, and I
It
wanted to
is.
have this be the first one that we talk about. So I'm all about sharing the love. So Dustin, what do you love about this movie?
I love a lot of things about it. I love most of all of Kubrick's films, uh, particularly The Shining, but I also really like Barry Lyndon, Clockwork Orange, Eyes Wide Shut, Lolita, Doctor Strange. I like all of them, but those are probably, and 2001. Those are probably my favorites. Not in any particular order there, I don't think. When it comes to The Shining, I remember watching it in full screen. It was always condensed down for full screen because you and I are from the days of um, satellite TV and VHS tapes, not let alone DVDs and Blu-rays and what have you. But um, the interesting thing about The Shining, and I forgot to look into this before we talked about the video, but is the symmetry. It's almost like everything's almost either pure symmetry or some sort of asymmetrical balance, right? And how the shots are made. Most directors, well, and cinematographers in particular, but they tend to shy away from pure symmetry. I had a fellow colleague when I was an undergrad, when we were taking painting and we were dealing with design classes together. We were talking about composition, and she had expressed that she was reading the psychology of what attracts different types of artisans to different compositions, and that the people who really like symmetry tend to be psychopathic or psychotic. And it's like, well, I mean, I don't know a lot about Kubrick. I've, as you know, dug really deep down the rabbit hole in the conspiratorial world. There's a lot of conspiracies connected to Stanley Kubrick. And it wouldn't be shocking if, because of the power that he had, he was able to, by the time he got into bed with Warner Brothers for 2001 after Spartacus. He pretty much had 100% artistic control over all of his films, including distribution, and even not just distribution, but shutting down of distribution with A Clockwork Orange. And no other director ever before or since has wielded that kind of power. That was part of the studio structure anyways. There's just a lot of strange things. There's a lot of beautiful things about The Shining besides the symmetry, but I think it conceptually goes into it, not just formally, not just talking about in terms of design. But I just love the over exaggerated, what Spielberg once called the kabuki theater performances in it. And I know Stephen King hated this adaptation of his movie.
Right.
I mean, I have a copy of the book, but I've never been able to finish the book. I don't like it. I don't like that take on it. I know Garris's TV version that was made when we were little, that came out like the mid-90s on TV with like Steven Weber. I know it follows the book more closely, but I don't like that story version. I think Kubrick's is much more interesting.
Why?
Well, for one thing, I think it's more aesthetically pleasing, both to the ear and to the sight. But I like the pacing of it. I like the actors better. I like the it's more thematic. It's less about character post development run amok, maybe. I'm just more thematic, and I'm more analytical, and so it speaks more to me than like obviously Miranda, my wife, like, oh, it's all about 100% about characters, just get all over the place, and it's like you lose complete track of all the other elements. You lose track of story, even a plot, but not just plot, but tone and theme. And I'm more about theme and tone, plot, and then characters probably my least favorite of the. I know you need it, but it's my least favorite of the four. So I know Stephen King's like, oh, Shelley Duvall's portrayal, it's so misogynistic. I don't see her that way. I don't think that's actually fair to Shelley Duvall's performance.
I agree.
And maybe I might be in the minority on that. A lot of people, I know Kubrick did not like working with her. I know she did not like working with him. I get that it's not the best performance ever. I understand that, but I think there's something real. There's something that there actually is an arc there, I think, where she seems more unconscious at first, not really aware of her husband's or her son's talents, psychic talents, the shine, right? The shining. And it's like obviously it gets palpable. It's like it once Danny and Jack are in the Overlook Hotel, it like amplifies their power. It feeds off of them like batteries. And then it's like she's even seeing these manifestations of these spirits or these energies that had been there before. And I think, like, obviously, like there's more reaction, there's a little bit more caution, there's more, I think there's even more of an active like participation in protecting her son at that point, where it was, like they talk in the beginning when they're driving to the hotel, right outside of the hotel, I guess. And it's like Danny's talking about knowing about cannibalism because he saw it on TV. She obviously wasn't monitoring very well what he was watching, and it's just like things like that. And it's like she's more engaged, in my opinion, as the movie progresses.
Yeah, I actually don't. I think her performance is believable and committed, and I don't understand the hate either. I was looking on the internet in just like review for this, and I was like, man, a lot of people are hating on her. And why would you blame her for a misogynistic reaction whenever it's the writing and the acting of Jack Nicholson that is the like emotional and verbal abuser and physical abuser, obviously. Like, so it doesn't make sense why you would blame her. Whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, well, and maybe they just don't want, maybe she's just not the most likable actress to watch, and so they find any excuse. Maybe the issue with her is you have Jack Nicholson, who's very charismatic, and like he's like up here and she's more subtle and not really as engaging, I don't think, of a performer. Maybe. Does that make her a bad actress? I mean, she does her job. I mean, ultimately, I know you can watch like a documentary. It's not the Room 237. It's a documentary filmed by, I think it's Vivian Kubrick, one of the daughters, and it's just a short documentary that they put it. I think they put it at the beginning or maybe at the end of the DVD, and it was on the Blu-ray with other like old documentaries, that they put on their extra stuff. And it's like, well, you can see that they didn't get along, but I still think that Kubrick pushed something interesting out of her, at least maybe a third into the film and all the way to the end of the film. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't agree with the majority on that one either, but when do I ever agree with the majority? So what about you? Let's talk about your reaction to it. What do you think of it?
Well,
you said we don't have the same taste, so.
Oh, were you hurt by that statement, Dustin?
No, I don't know anybody who has my taste.
No, I mean, obviously you've influenced my taste, but
mosquito bites.
But I have like a different. Oh, I'm sorry about your bite.
They're bad here right now.
Oh, I
That's
see.
just why I'm doing this, because I have bad bites. So if everyone's like, ooh, like what's that monkey man? Well, I have bites all over me from mosquitoes.
Oh, okay. But yeah, we just have different natural like genre interests. Like,
sure,
horror isn't my, like, I'm not like super moved by horror, and because I was raised with so much horror from horror films, but it desensitized me in a way where I'm not even scared by most scary movies. Like, I'm so numb that I don't feel anything, and to me it's boring. Like, that's how a lot of movies are. This one though, this horror film, I do really like a few things about it. I do like that it's psychological, and it's also basically a haunted place, which I find very interesting. I like the psychic stuff, I agree with you. The tone is good. The cinematography is good. The pacing, even that interesting theme, it works.
Are you talking about Desiree, the Day of Wrath?
Boom, 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 that like horn one or whatever.
It's actually an old, like, what is it, Gregorian chant kind of sounding thing.
Yeah.
Day of Wrath. And then it was what, Rachel Eklund and of course Wendy Carlos, and they kind of put the score together with some of like Bartok and maybe Ligeti and some other like weird, like, I think Wendy Carlos, which used to be formerly Walter Carlos, a trans person. Wendy Carlos said like a bunch of hissing synthesizers because we failed. Like, they were trying to do other things, but they still were able to kind of synthesize what they made, and they made it work. And then they kind of accented it with more classical pieces kind of sprinkled throughout. So
see, this is why Dustin's so cool. He is a walking encyclopedia, and he's full of film knowledge. I couldn't know half the stuff you know.
Oh yes, you could. I learn all these useless facts, that get me a job. Not surprise. So anyway.
Yeah, I think I answered the question though. I also I find it interesting that it's on an Indian or Native American burial ground, kind of like Poltergeist too, right? Interesting to me.
And there's a lot of things that other YouTubers and other fans have kind of picked up about that kind of stuff, which was interesting. 2 videos I did watch on YouTube. I watched the film a couple of times recently before we were going to talk about this movie, and I watched it was New Rock Stars, Eric Voss, had a video on it, and the YouTube channel Looper had a good video that talked about a lot of these different things. And they both brought up all the Native American burial ground aspect, of course, which like Stuart Ullman at the beginning explains to Wendy and Jack, like it was made on a burial ground and they repelled Indian attacks. Obviously the soil is rotten and cursed, and that probably has something to do with like the unnatural things that happen, and the deaths probably that occurred building the place, and then of course after the place is standing. There's a painting when Jack, it's one of those first steady cam shots when he walks in after the credits, and then it follows him up into Stuart Ullman's office, which by the way, it's been pointed out by other YouTube people as well, that Stuart Ullman's office is located, like if you put a map out of the layout, it wouldn't make sense that behind Stuart is like all that backlight, like the windows,
Yeah.
because that would be like in the middle of like the overlook, and there's no like little insulated garden. But to the left, if you watch it again, there's so many like weird, I mean, there's so many details, and that's one reason the movie never gets old, in my opinion. Like I love having it on in the background, even if I'm not like focusing on it. But there's this painting that's a very colorful painting to the left of Jack as he goes up and knocks on Stuart Ullman's door. And it's I think it's called like the Great Mother, maybe? And it's by an American artist, Normal Morso. And there's actually a lot of commentary about in the movie, of course, you might remember. I think it is Wendy, isn't it? It's Shelley Duvall that is talking about, are these original Native American motifs?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Stuart Ullman said yes, they're, I forget, like Apache and maybe in something else.
Yeah, because it's in
and
color.
it's like
Yeah.
and if you look at like a lot of Native American motifs, but even the ones in the movie, there's a lot of repetition in that, and there's a lot of symmetry and a lot of mirroring and balance. Like if we're looking at it formally, like the formal elements and principles of design, and like even like going back to my main point, a lot of the movie seems there's been a lot of other people point out mirrors. People talk about there's shots of like when Danny comes in to get his fire engine from Jack, or from the bedroom, and Wendy's like, don't wake Dad up. She knows he's been kind of crazy acting anyways, writing. And so like, a lot of the shot takes place in a mirror. There's one time before where she feeds him, and the shot is just done through looking at a mirror. It's not actually looking at the actors
Yeah.
back behind the cameraman. There's a lot of like the two Grady the girls that are standing in the hallway. You could like cut those shots in half, and it would be just like almost a perfect flip of it before, which is interesting. One of my main questions, you hear Stuart Ullman ask, or no, he's talking about Grady, and he's bringing up the murder that happened here, and stuff to Jack at the beginning, and he said daughters the ages of 8 and 10. But when you look at the girls, they look like identical twins.
Why is that? Yeah.
I don't know, but it's an interesting point. Like, what is that all about? Do we see the ghosts? Is there a glitch in the ghost world here? And we just see like, so I only know what one of them looked like, so I'll just mirror the other one. I don't, or maybe we see them at the same age, even though one of them was 2 years old. I don't understand, but it does give that beautiful symmetry and this idea of like something being repeated. And there's all these ideas like I think the best, I mean, because the movie's ambiguous, right?
Yeah.
There is an ambiguity to the movie, especially with the ending. And so it's like, okay, and we hear Jack talk about, I've been here before, deja vu. So it's like maybe hell for him is a loop. Other than being in the car, which is close to the hotel, we never see Jack away from the hotel. He's always close to the hotel. We see Danny and Wendy away from the hotel, but that's it. So it's like, is he stuck there?
Well, that's the question with that old photograph at the very end, right?
Yep.
When did he actually pass? Is it just now with her leaving, or were these people that went there and he has this story about them and he's been dead for a long time? I mean, we don't
Maybe
know.
I don't know. It's an interesting point.
Yeah.
And then there was like an overlap, where it keeps zooming in to that photo at the end, and then it goes down to like July 4th ball, 1921. But like that last zoom up on his face, on Jack Nicholson's face, it overlaps his hair, and someone says it looks like a Hitler mustache. And there's like 42 is a number you see repeated throughout the movie. And 1942 is when Himmler initiated the final solution. And with all the talk of the burial ground and Native Americans, and like there's a sense of violence in the movie that's so, it's like, is there a parallel that Kubrick was consciously trying to make concerning, the Nazis and the final solution and World War II? You see 42 on one of Danny's shirts. You see also Apollo 11 on one of Danny's sweaters when he's in the hallway. And remember, that's when like, ooh, Kubrick faked the moon landing. And you see him wear that Apollo 11 shirt. And it's like, what is this? And he did change the number of the room 237, where the woman is in the bathtub. It was a different room, and I forget the number, but it was different in the book.
Yeah, 217, I think.
Yes. And so it's just like, some people think, well, 237,000 miles between Earth and the moon or something like that. That's what someone brought up, although it was outdated because it's more like 250,000 or something close to that. That's what somebody was, I think it was the Looper video that was talking about this. So these aren't original ideas, but it's just some interesting things. And it's like, because really, like director Alexander B.H. Cox had already talked about in some documentaries about Kubrick, it's like Kubrick, his main influence by this time in his career, 2001 on, he's about appropriating and he's influencing himself. And so it wouldn't be a surprise, like there's this connection to some other endeavor off on the side, and it's plastered as a symbol in one of his mainstream later films. It's just an interesting point.
But you think he faked the moon landing?
I don't know. People involved with that were involved with NASA, or say they were involved with the moon landing, I don't know names, I'd have to go look. They say, well, no, we did actually get to the moon, but they had a fake video made in case we couldn't do it, to beat the Russians or the communists. And Kubrick was the one that did this faked video. I don't know. I like conspiracy theories like that. They're interesting, but they're not the real theories that I think are pointing at really important things. But yeah, there's also something interesting you might find interesting about Stuart Ullman's office. There's a red book sitting on his desk, and it actually is, someone pointed out, and this I think was in the Eric Voss video, that it's Carl Jung's The Red Book, which was his book that he wrote between 1950 and 1930 that had paintings and drawings in it, like his dreams and his visions. It was like his psychoanalysis. And it's interesting because like you can read a lot of quotes about Kubrick talking about, obviously digesting Freud and Jung, and like this idea of, the fascination with the archetypes or archetypal images. Well, going back to the great Mother painting, Mother, like Eric Voss explained, is one of the main archetypes, one of the archetypal symbols that's evoked again and again. And I do think maybe that's one reason this movie fascinates me. I almost feel like even before I saw the movie, I'd seen it. I mean, I know I hadn't.
Because of the archetypes?
Yeah, I think it evokes the archetypes and the collective unconscious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would.
And that movie for me speaks to me stylistically enough that the sound and the visuals and maybe the visual symbols evoke a lot of those types of things.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and Kubrick talked about that. there was a quote by him. I don't know. I had a couple of notes here. There was a quote by him that I thought was interesting. I didn't actually write the quote down, but I just wrote a couple of notes about it. That I don't know. It was something to the effect of, the evil side of humankind he thought was a universal thing, and he said one of the only ways to confront of the human unconscious, there's an evil side to the human unconscious. That's what he said, and one of the only ways to really confront it was through art. And so he, of course, liked like bigger than life performances. Like when I think of Malcolm McDowell in A Clockwork Orange, I do think of James Cagney. And he was talking about Cagney and some of these like over the top, bigger than life actors for the Jack Nicholson performance too. When people think it got too extreme, he's like, no, it's a great one. It's like these other ones that he really liked, that from his youth. I don't know. I just thought all of that was interesting, and I don't know. Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
So like when Halloran, right, the cook, is talking to Danny, and they're bringing up the subject of ghosts. Do you think Kubrick was getting at something slightly different than ghosts when he was having him talk to Danny about like, okay, there's something bad here. It's like when you burn toast, the traces of itself get left behind. Well, what do you think was Kubrick's philosophy coming up here?
This is one of the main points I wanted to make in this podcast, which is that the theory of tulpas. Have you heard of a tulpa, Dustin? That word?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So the concept is that it is like a copy, like an energy of something. And so some people think, oh, that's what ghosts actually are. The ones that are earthbound and lower fourth dimension, playing out these horrific moments of their lives. They're actually energies left from the people that had those traumatic moments, just replaying it, but their soul has moved on to a higher plane. So that can happen on a large scale as well, and create these energy vortexes of all of these different tulpas of these tragedies, hence like a massacre of Native Americans or whatever it might be in the case of The Shining, that would create that. So it's like a constant replaying of these traumatic.
That sounds very much on point with something that he might have been studying, or maybe Diane Johnson who helped him write that script too. Maybe it was something that they evoked.
And the other
That's
point
an interesting
is that
point.
it could maybe be even possession, right? Like the tulpas could possess, but you could also look at it as these are conscious demonic beings as well, or they developed their own consciousness. You could look at it a lot of different ways, meaning they're aware that they are there. I don't know. So great questions. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well on that. Like, do you think it's possession? Do you think it's not real? Do you think it's just psychological? Like, what do you think?
Well, I wonder if it's a varying degree of both. I mean, you are dealing with characters that are sensitive, very, very sensitive, particularly Danny.
Yeah.
But Jack is sensitive too.
Yeah.
Because Jack is the one they get to. Jack has felt like he's been there before. Joe Turkel, who played Lloyd, the bartender, and he's talking to, because he doesn't drink, but he wants to drink, and then the house is basically feeding him this drink. And like you saw Dr. Sleep, right? The follow-up.
Yeah, it was good.
The follow-up Stephen King story, the sequel. Well, like in that one, they have Ewan McGregor play the older Danny, and he sees his dad as the bartender. So I wonder if that's his father. Lloyd is his father in the first one, or a father figure of some kind, a familiar avatar for the house or whatever's in the house or that area, that space, to take over, to be able to persuade. I don't know. It's just an interesting question I had watching it, but I wonder. There's definitely something there. So these tulpas you mentioned, and something can, because they do still very much, they bring up the Native American aspect. Like I know Stephen King's book does, like a biographer Bill Baxter explained, like King's book is blatantly mystical. Kubrick's feels it's more Kantian, it's more Freudian, but it's like it's kind of playing on that ambiguity where it might actually go beyond ambiguity, because they're giving you empirical data that there's obviously something horrible here, or horrible energy here, right? A recurring loop of that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like these repeating frequencies of vibration that are not good continue to linger in this space, maybe because another external force is causing that to continue and loop. So I would say yes, I think, to both.
Cool. Yeah, I agree.
Which I think Kubrick said he was an atheist.
Oh.
And obviously Stephen King's not. Although I don't think what Stephen King believes in is a good thing. But that's another argument for another day. So I wonder if it was Kubrick's way of trying to explore through different facets, the psychic and or ghostly supernatural phenomena.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's different. It's like something phenomena happens in this, like, noumenal world that we reach through our senses, if we're talking in Kantian terms of the phenomenal world. Oh yeah, it was another thing that was brought up in the Looper video. And I thought it was interesting. I never noticed it before. I noticed there were posters. So when Danny arrives at the Overlook with his parents, and he's throwing the darts in the game room, and he senses something, he turns around and he sees the two Grady girls. There's posters up on the walls around the door opening where the Grady girls are, and I think it's on the one to the audience's left. There's a poster that says Monarch. Well, there is a Monarch skiing resort. It has a person, skiing on it. It's like, okay. But then, if you remember, Stuart Ullman is asked by Jack in the interview, hey, it seems like the skiing up here would be fantastic. Why do you keep it closed during the winter? And he's like, well, there's no feasible way to keep it open, like the roads during the winter with the snow. And it's like, okay, so there's not skiing at the Overlook during the winter, but they have a ski resort like poster in the room. And because you'd hit the nail on the head, this movie is very much a psychological horror movie. And so, I mean, even if there's external things, there's obviously a lot of internal conflicts going on here between all these characters, all three of the main characters. Four characters if you include Halloran, right?
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, it's really a shame what happened there, of course. But
in the book, he doesn't die. I haven't read the book. I read about.
I honestly can't remember. Again, I don't like the book. I like Stephen King to an extent, but I do not like that book. I can't get into that one.
I haven't read it, but I'm just saying. Anyway.
Miranda doesn't like Stephen King. She's like, every character sounds the same, like the same voice. It's that cynical, angry Stephen King voice, and I don't like that.
I'm with Miranda there. Yeah.
And some of it is, she's like, the movies work better because different actors are portraying the character, and it's not just Stephen King playing like with a wig on when he's a woman here. Ooh, Wendy, and then he just loves his arrow. Oh, I'm crazy Jack over here. So like
Stephen King, he's obviously talented, but it's like,
yeah,
his writing style isn't for everyone. He has a very specific way of writing that works great for some. Me and Miranda No, it doesn't work, and that's okay.
I've always liked him. I've always liked his writing style, but that's me.
Okay, well, you do like it then. I thought you said you didn't like it.
I don't like that book.
Oh,
I love Dark Tower. I love what I haven't finished. I haven't finished it yet, but there's some stuff in that I find disagreeable. It's not the writing style, it's content issues. And Pet Cemetery was absolutely terrifying. That book is so freaking creepy. I love his short story books too, Skeleton Crew in particular. But anyway, what was the point I was going to make? Well, maybe you were making a point. Let's go back to you.
we're going to, but I have something else to say too.
Go ahead. I don't know what I was. Go ahead.
All right, it'll come back to you.
Oh, I know what it was. Go ahead though.
Okay. So they allude to this in Doctor Sleep as well, that people with the shine, the sensitives with the psychic abilities and sensitivities, that it is too overwhelming, and that they do try and numb themselves from this. And so the connection is like drug use, alcohol, so addiction, substance abuse, basically. And Jack Nicholson's character is like, I mean, he hurt Danny, and he already had that within him, basically. Even though he was a sensitive, he had a darkness within him, and he was trying to cover that up, I think, with the alcohol. This is my little spiel. Let me know what you think when I'm done. So he was trying to suppress his own anger, his own frustration of, oh, I have to write this book, I have to do all these things, the world being so demanding. So he stops it, but it can't help but come out. And of course, he is attracted, because I believe in the law of attraction. I know you don't, but I think that has a big significance, because it's kind of a warning. And like with Ewan McGregor's character in Doctor Sleep, like a warning to not turn off your abilities by numbing them, because then you're not able to help yourself or help others. You actually hurt yourself and others. So it's like a warning to not substance abuse. Anyway, that's my little spiel. What do you think?
Well, and I think he realizes that he has to help that girl in Doctor Sleep, but I think he was doing it out of a feeling of necessity. I don't think he could handle it.
Yeah.
And after his dad's death, like, it was just, those ghosts still followed him around. He had to find a psychological gimmick, like the coffins that he could put them in to leave them alone, so he could actually stop hearing the. I just don't think he could deal with it.
So sad.
It was such a traumatic experience. It was not a place he should have been, nor a place of benevolent spirits. So I mean, but I think he did overcome that, and of course he sacrificed himself so that she could continue to live.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to my point, the Monarch poster. The Monarch poster.
Okay.
That's what I was talking about.
What is it?
So because it is psychological. Okay, so we see this Monarch poster, skiing person. There's a skiing resort named Monarch, but they don't ski at the Overlook. So what the heck is this about? It's like, oh, you're advertising something that we don't have from a different place. Okay, go there instead. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So some fans have read into that, there was, of course, in 1977, through the Freedom of Information Act, and this is conspiracy fact, it's not conspiracy theory, the church committee, the Senate hearings, they exposed that there was not only MK Ultra, which was CIA mind manipulation. There was previous, it was Artichoke and Bluebird. They were different projects that were illegally experimenting on their subjects with drugs and mind manipulation, mind control. And this is all under, I think, Richard Helm. He was the CIA director at the time. But what a lot of people have, I think, discovered, sometimes I think it's just implicitly, that it continued after it was exposed. And I think it just changed the name. There was over 20,000 documents, and most of them are gone now. I mean, it was made public, but we only have so many. So it was a real thing. I don't know if Timothy Leary, the LSD guru, was probably involved. There were a lot of other cabal-oriented elite people that were involved in this. I don't know if Alan Dulles might have started the program. He was responsible for the Warren Commission when JFK was assassinated. Him and his brother, they had very much something to do with JFK's assassination. They did not like JFK, and he fired him. And then JFK gets assassinated, and boom, who's in charge of the Warren Commission? We all know Johnson didn't like JFK either. The JFK pissed off a lot of different factions of the cabal. Being a Kennedy himself, I think they saw him as a turncoat or a traitor. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here. But I know Jung, going back to Carl Jung, he was an informant, a psychological informant or an analyst for Alan Dulles at one point, for psychological studies that the CIA was taking on. So they've been doing this stuff for a very long time. But there's something called Project Monarch, like going back to the Monarch poster. Monarch deals more with, well, we can't control everybody's mind, the power structure, not just government, not just intelligence or alphabet soup agencies, but the entire apparatus. So if we can't control everybody, how do we get as close as possible to that? Oh, well, we can control the mouthpieces of the culture, the celebrities, the famous people. Mm-hmm. And so there's just some weird stuff that people have connected through that. Like, is it Bill Watson? He's that dark-haired guy that's kind of has a stark face, and he just sits down and he says like one or two lines to Jack, and then he's just quiet the rest of the time when Stuart Ullman's having the interview with Jack Torrance. Anyway, Watson was someone connected to, I think, Project Monarch. And so there's like a couple of other connections like that. And we know Kubrick was involved with these other conspiracies in his films concerning the elite. So it wouldn't be a stretch to imagine, with concerning the cerebral, moody thriller kind of qualities of the film, that it could be connected to exposing that. Anyway, that was the other thing I wanted to mention.
That is interesting. So I guess, to try and understand that a little bit more, this Project Monarch, how that would fit in would be that this was an experiment. The whole family was being experimented on.
And I mean, it could be, or at least Jack, and we're seeing these projections of other family members and important people.
Oh, wow.
Kind of counteracting what's going. I don't. It's just another ambiguity.
That's interesting.
Which I think Kubrick, if we're watching this movie's very much about ambiguities, and maybe it's a safe way to kind of hide such said symbolism inside of it. So, yeah. But anyway,
yeah, there is a lot of ambiguity, which I think does make it a really rich film, and I see why it's your favorite. I get it. Yeah, so it's a good one.
It's not always been my favorite. Another Stephen King used to be my favorite, but I think I might have drove it in the ground a bit too much. That was Creepshow, the Romero film. That's but childhood. I also read something. My second favorite film probably is Blade Runner.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And
talk about that.
There's the footage at the beginning of the movie, and this was in the Eric Voss video. The footage at the beginning, the helicopter shot over the Glacial National Park as Jack's driving up to the overlook. That footage, some of it was repurposed for the redone ending to Blade Runner. A lot of people don't know that. I didn't know that. I was surprised. I'm like, ooh, my favorite movies, they're connected by a little link of footage. So,
That's so perfect. Wow, how funny.
but they are very different films. There's a psychological aspect though to Blade Runner, I think, as well.
Mhm.
The main point being, and I know this is a different movie, but is Deckard a replicant or not?
Yeah.
Does it take a replicant to retire a replicant?
Oh, and the parallel with this film would be like, is Jack really there or not? Is his family,
Yes.
or is he literally just a ghost, a tulpa?
And he
And
might be,
you have like a theme with the lead characters like questioning what they are in your favorite film.
despite their moral extremes, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could say, well, Deckard is killing people. He's terrible, but or he's killing these poor replicants that didn't want to be here anyways. What is the difference between them and a human life, other than that they're, it's kind of this whole idea of like playing God, like they're human made. The Tyrell Corporation made them. But I mean, I think as the movie goes and it becomes about protecting Sean Young's character, it's more, it's not, it's obviously it's murder as a job or retirement as a job, and he's putting away some very violent individuals. So I mean, obviously, I wouldn't really even put him in the anti-hero category, but that's me.
I don't think I.
Jack is a he self-inflicts, and he might be a victim to an extent, but he's also obviously a victimizer. So
Well,
he's definitely a
hurt
villain.
people, like the villains are usually very, very hurt, traumatized people. So that's, I think
Very
that's
passionate.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jack Nicholson, great job, right? Great choice.
I think so. I mean, I don't see that movie with anybody else. So,
Yeah.
didn't you have a roommate that met him once?
I don't remember what.
I thought, who was it? Who was it? It was a server. She was a server, and she served him, and he seemed like he was rather high and out of it.
Really? Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't remember this story. That's so funny. Well, maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's like his acting style is kind of interesting because you kind of almost, at least for me as a viewer, question him. Are you being serious? Are you being comedic? Like, he's in it, but I don't know quite where he's going. And I think maybe that is what Kubrick liked about him, is that there was maybe this sinister bit that, but it was also like partly comedic and it's like towing the line. What do you think?
Mhm. Oh, I think so. And I think that's one thing that really pissed off Stephen King. There's not an arc other than the degree of of aggression.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not really an arc when it comes to Jack Nicholson's Jack Torrance character. He's obviously crazy from the beginning. Your son and wife, how do you think they'll take to it? They'll love it. I
Yeah.
mean, he's obviously like he's psychotic, like from the beginning. Perfect for a child.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Cozy. Like he's obviously fucking psychotic. So it's I don't know. Like I could see where that maybe would irritate someone, because Stephen King wrote Jack Torrance as like an anagram or like as a projection of himself. He didn't want Jack Torrance to be this guy.
It's personal. Okay. Okay.
So, but that's not Kubrick. Oftentimes, a character's a pawn. They're there as set dressing to be moved around to tell a bigger thematic thing, to help me with my tone and my visual composition. I mean, and I would probably be more of a director like that too. You don't see that a lot in film anymore. We've gotten, I think, more to the And maybe it's just been really relevant since we've been kind of into film, but it's much more about character studies. I think that's more what filmmakers are into now. It's not so much about um uh, not so much about like visual painting, I don't think anymore, or at least not in that way, not like it had been in cinema history's past.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, Kubrick he was trained before he became a filmmaker as a photographer,
Well, that shows.
and I think it's actually quite obvious when you look at his films, and they're great to look at, even if you don't like them.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of people that don't like them.
Yeah.
Mrs. McCullough hated Stanley Kubrick. I'm like, how can you hate Stanley Kubrick? But she just hated him. Oh, her and I never agreed on anything. It seemed like,
His
but
films are not uppers. That's for sure.
no, they're not.
So
They're not.
that's a good thing.
They're more Freudian, really, not Jungian.
Yeah.
They're more cynical about uh, human nature in general, I think.
Like
So
you. So that makes sense.
I'm not. I'm trying not to be, but I'm interested to see like art that, like films that have like the impact that can tap into that kind of collective unconscious, kind of those archetypes like The Shining has, but elevate the content to a greater moral veneration.
Ooh, I love that. Yes. I want to see that
So
too. Yeah.
anyway, and I know there's great films that are made now, and I think Doctor Sleep. What did you think of Doctor Sleep? I mean, I know we talked about it a
Really,
minute.
I really liked it. I mean, it's not quite like Kubrick's film, but just
No.
it was good. And it was interesting that the beings in that it kind of explained. So I guess this is like going away from the tulpa theory that these are
Mm.
literal like soul eating demonic beings, these ghosts that like eat souls, and that that could exist. There are dark beings that exist. I've experienced dark beings. I think it's good to not fixate on fearing dark beings, but to be aware, and to know that they do exist. And so I think films like Doctor Sleep or The Shining do bring that to our awareness. And it was a good wrapping up the story. It was a strong film, strong performances. The actress that was I don't remember her name, that was like the main demon. She was great.
Oh yes, I who was then at like The Greatest Showman and the Mission Impossible sequels. I can't ever think of her name. Miranda really likes her too,
Yeah.
but yeah, her performance was everyone's performance, I think, in that film was pretty. At least the main players. I read it. Yeah, they are demons. They're parasites, and they're older than a human. That's probably not a bad way to take it. I don't disagree. I think there are demonic forces out there. There's a lot of fascinating things about Stanley Kubrick. The documentary is it's not bad. The one narrated by Tom Cruise, Stanley Kubrick, A Life in Pictures. I recommend that. I have his 4 or 5 main releases, his biggest films on Blu-ray, and they have a lot of documentaries. I've watched most of them, and I just find it fascinating. He's definitely a director that I respond to more. So I did happen to find the book you got me when you went to, was it an exhibit, right?
Yeah.
Stanley Kubrick, Masters of Cinema. And so I still have this book, and like there's Joe Turkel and Jack Nicholson. I think this might be the only time we had mentioned that he wasn't really in the Overlook itself, but they were fairly close to it. Ah!
Oh, that character. I feel so sorry for her.
I mean, like, it's it's a neat little book that kind of goes by. It's by Bill Crone, and it's a nice quick film history. And what's nice is it does give you a lot of good stills, because you could almost take any still from a Kubrick film and it would just be a great like photograph in a gallery somewhere. But I mean, I did kind of go through it a little bit before we had this podcast video, and it was interesting. Gave me a couple of ideas, not as many as I was thinking, but it was just a rich book that kind of gave me some good feedback on him when I was really studying him quite a bit before. Interesting filmmaker, Asperger's.
Do you want to share that?
Yes, and we believe our oldest son is as well. He definitely has the tendencies.
Which is fine. There's a beauty in the autism spectrum, I think, and people should not be ostracized for it. That's my belief. Yeah.
On one hand, I mean, the people that are really high on the autism spectrum, it's very noticeable, and they can't function. It's very difficult for them. And there is obviously something there, but the low end of the spectrum, Asperger's and maybe even slightly lower than that, I don't know if it really, I mean, there's some interesting insights and strange social quirks, but I don't think it really means a whole lot. Maybe it's over labeling in some ways.
But Kubrick had that, and so do you. So that's interesting that your favorite film is by someone with the same sort of way of looking at the world.
Yes, they have insights that a lot of other people don't get.
I agree.
Especially on the rich inner world. And I think being an intuitive helps balance that obsession of particulars, because an intuitive is more abstract minded, more prone to generalities and metaphors, and so like there's a competition. I mean, there is a war there, and it can be frustrating, but it can bring out a lot of good too, or balance an individual pretty well.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, that would be my little bit on that. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Kristin, to sum up Kubrick, or at least The Shining?
Despite it not being my favorite kind of film, or characters, like Jack is a frustrating character for me. I'd still appreciate it, and I can recognize the brilliance and the ambiguity of the film, and even all the spiritual ambiguity as well with it. I really appreciate that, and it makes us question, right, what this could be. And thank you for sharing, Dustin. Thanks for sharing all your opinions to talk about your favorite film.
My pleasure.
All right, till next time, Dustin. Bye-bye.